Guys, can you believe that on a regular workday, I accidentally fell asleep in this huge master suite in a Beverly Hills mansion, and the CEO, the owner of everything, fell in love with me at first sight. I swear, the maid accidentally fell asleep in the suite, and the CEO fell in love with her at first sight, and that maid was me. We never expect the love of our life to show up at the wrong time. But sometimes, destiny has a way of bringing two hearts together, even when they live in completely different worlds. My name is Emily Rusales. I'm 24 years old, and until that day, I was just another invisible worker in the massive, cold houses of Los Angeles. I worked as a housekeeper, cleaning, folding, dusting, smiling even when I was exhausted inside. All of it so I could save up and hopefully, one day, study nursing. My dream. The Carter family mansion was one of the most extravagant places I'd ever seen. Marble floors, staircases like movie sets, and a master suite so big. My old apartment could have fit inside twice. And it was in that suite, in that impossible room full of luxury, that my love story began. But it didn't start with flowers or music. It started with pure exhaustion. It was the end of a long day. My feet were throbbing, my eyes burning. I stepped into the suite just to fix the bed, my last task. I thought, I'll just sit for a second. I closed my eyes, just for a moment. When I opened them, again, he was there. Nathan Carter, the CEO, the man everyone whispered about, feared, respected, the silent ruler of that mansion. He stood in the doorway, white shirt slightly unbuttoned, jacket over his arm, a glass of whiskey in one hand, and a stare that I still feel on my skin. I froze. I jumped up, stumbled on the carpet, and started apologizing like crazy, my voice shaking. My heart, it was about to leap out of my chest. But he didn't yell. He didn't scold me. He didn't fire me. He looked at me for a long time. And then he said, "You looked peaceful. I didn't want to wake you." Those words broke me. What? Me? Sweaty uniform, messy bun, dark circles under my eyes from working double shifts. And he was saying, "I look peaceful." That moment, strange and quiet, was when I realized he wasn't mad. He was mesmerized right then. In that ridiculous moment, he fell for me. And deep down, I felt something too. Even though I knew it was wrong, forbidden, completely out of bounds, I ran out of that room like my life depended on it, and I prayed it would just go away. But the next day, he looked at me the same way again. And from that moment on, nothing was the same. What started as an accident turned into the beginning of the most intense love story I've ever lived. And if you think you know what love looks like, you haven't heard this one yet. Asterisk, if this story is touching your heart, leave a like. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more true love stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you know someone who's falling for someone they shouldn't, share this. Sometimes one simple story can change someone's whole day. Thank you for being here and for listening with your heart. After that day, the day he saw me sleeping like a fool in his suite, everything shifted. He didn't speak to me right away, but I could feel it, the energy in the air whenever we crossed paths. You know when someone is watching you, but trying not to, that quiet tension that fills a room, even when nobody's saying anything. It was like that. Every time I entered the house after that, I felt it. I wasn't invisible anymore. It started small. He'd pass by the hallway and nod, not like a boss to an employee, but like a man noticing a woman. Then came the second moment I'll never forget. I was arranging fresh flowers in the main living room. My back was turned, and I didn't hear him come in. When I turned around, I gasped, because he was standing right there. Again, looking at me. And then he said, "You have a way of moving like the room belongs to you." I laughed nervously. I think I said something like, "It definitely doesn't." And he just smiled. That smile. It wasn't practiced. It wasn't forced. It was like he was amused. not by the flowers, not by the mansion, but by me. From that day on, things got confusing. Not loud, not dramatic, just emotionally loud. Little things. He started having coffee in the same room where I cleaned. He began asking small questions. Where I was from, what I studied, what music I liked. One afternoon, I was wiping down a table when he asked, "Have you ever been to New York?" I shook my head. He looked at me and said, "You should go. The way you look at the world, I think you'd fall in love with that city." I didn't understand what he meant, but my heart was already falling for something else. I tried to fight it. Told myself it was just kindness. Told myself I was imagining the way he paused near me, the way his eyes stayed longer than they should. But one night, one very quiet evening, he passed by the kitchen and said, "Emily, do you always disappear when your shift is done? Or do you ever stay just because you want to?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. Because for the first time, I wanted to stay. And that scared me more than anything. I was the maid. He was the CEO. But the way he looked at me, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't dare dream of. And deep down, I think he felt it too. Asterisk, after that night in the kitchen, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his voice in my head. Do you always disappear when your shift is done? Or do you ever stay just because you W? And two, that wasn't something you said to a maid. That was something you said to a woman. And I didn't know how to feel about that. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual. My chest was tight. My hands sweating for no reason. Everything in the house looked the same. But I wasn't the same. Every room I cleaned, every hallway I crossed, I expected to feel his presence. And when he wasn't there, I missed him. I hated myself for that. I wasn't supposed to fall for a man like him. He belonged to another world. The world of power, of meetings, of expensive suits and private jets. Me, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment I shared with my cousin. I took the bus. I brought my lunch in a plastic container. But feelings don't care about rules or logic. And when he appeared again that morning, sleeves rolled up, no tie, hair slightly messy, it was like the air changed. We didn't even say anything. He walked by me in the hallway. And for a moment, our arms almost touched. Almost, but neither of us moved. That almost sent a current through my entire body. I knew he felt it too. He paused, looked back for a second, then kept walking. That entire day, we didn't speak. But that night, I found something. It was a book, left open on the kitchen counter. It was mine, one I'd brought with me, just to read during breaks. And inside, there was a note. In his handwriting, "You write poetry." I didn't expect that. Page 42 made me stop and breathe slower. "Thank you for that." I nearly dropped it. I didn't even know he noticed me reading. But he saw details. He was paying attention. The next day, he didn't mention the note. He acted normal, almost cold. But when I was leaving, just before the door closed behind me, he said quietly, "Page 53 is beautiful too." And I froze. That was the moment I knew. He was falling for me, slowly, intensely, silently, and I was falling too. But where would this lead? Was this real? Or was I just a chapter in someone else's story? My heart wanted to believe it was more than that. And I knew I was about to find out. The next few days were filled with little things. Not grand gestures, not love declarations, just quiet tension. Smells that lasted 1 second too long. Footsteps that slowed when we passed each other. Silences that said more than words ever could. There was one moment, and I swear I still feel it when I close my eyes. I was dusting the shelves in the study, and I felt him enter the room. I didn't turn round, but I knew it was him. I knew by the way the air shifted. He stood there, behind me, for a full minute. Then he said, softly, "What are you afraid would happen if you looked at me?" My hands stopped moving. My heart started racing. I turned, slowly, and when our eyes met, It was like something cracked open between us. Something unspoken. Something big. But I didn't answer him. I couldn't, because the truth was, I didn't know what I was afraid of. Maybe that I'd fall harder than I could survive. Maybe that he wasn't playing fair. Or maybe that he was. Later that night, I talked to myself in the bathroom mirror like a crazy person. You're the help. Emily, you clean toilets and make beds. He signs paychecks. This is fantasy, nothing more. But I didn't believe it. Not when he noticed every little thing I did. Not when he remembered the poem on page 53. Or when he casually left a cup of chamomile tea on the side counter. My favorite, without a word, he made me feel seen, and that was dangerous because no one had ever really looked at me before. Not like that. And the more he did, the more I wanted to be seen. By him. Only him. One evening, I stayed later than usual. I pretended to be organizing the pantry. But really, I was just hoping he'd come down from his office. And he did. He stood at the kitchen door, watching me. And then he said, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I also can't keep pretending I don't notice you. I turned slowly. I looked at him. And for once, I didn't look away. You don't make me uncomfortable, I whispered. His shoulders relaxed. He nodded once, then nothing more. He left. But I knew what was happening. We were circling something bigger than both of us. And sooner or later, we'd have to decide if we were brave enough to step into it. I don't know exactly when it became impossible to pretend anymore. Maybe it was the way my hands trembled whenever he stood too close. Maybe it was how the silence between us got heavier, not colder, but fuller, like something waiting to burst. It wasn't love yet. It was anticipation. A kind of magnetic energy that pulled us closer without a single touch. And then came the night I can't forget. I had stayed late again, helping with last-minute arrangements for a dinner party they were hosting the next day. The house was quiet, the lights soft. I was alone in the dining room, adjusting silverware that didn't need adjusting. I just wasn't ready to leave. I heard his footsteps, slow, confident. Familiar now. He didn't say anything at first, just walked around the table, straightening a candle that was already straight. I smelled without turning. Everything's perfect already. He paused behind me, too close. I could feel the heat of him at my back. It wasn't physical contact, but my skin reacted like it was. Then he said, no, it wasn't perfect. Not until you were in this room. I turned, slowly, my breath caught. He looked at me like he was memorizing every inch of my face, like I was something rare, sacred. And for a moment, the air between us stopped moving. His hand lifted slightly, just a few inches, like he might tuck my hair behind my ear. But he didn't. He just stood there, breathing. I felt it. We were one heartbeat away from a kiss, and I wanted it so badly. My lips parted, but no words came. Then something broke the moment. A noise upstairs, distant but sharp. We both blinked. He stepped back. You should get some rest, he said, voice tight. I nodded, but my legs barely moved. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because I was confused, but because I wasn't. I wanted him, not his money, not his world. Him. The man who made tea for me in silence, the man who read the poems I loved and left notes about them, the man who never touched me, but whose nearness made me feel more alive than anyone ever had. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew I didn't want it to stop. And part of me, the part that believed in love even when it didn't make sense, hoped that maybe, just maybe, he didn't want it to stop either. The next morning, I woke up with one thought echoing in my mind. If I'm not careful, I'm going to lose myself in this. And yet, I still went to work early. I still fixed my hair a little nicer. I still wore that one pair of earrings I liked, the ones my sister gave me before I moved to LA. Because deep down, I wanted him to notice. And he did. He didn't say it, but I saw it in the pause when I walked in the way he looked up from his phone and didn't speak for a moment too long, in the way his gaze softened, but burned at the same time. That morning, he was sitting in the sunroom, reading. I was watering the plants nearby, pretending not to care, pretending not to shake. And then he asked, "Do you ever feel like you're playing a role that doesn't belong to you?" I looked at him. His voice was calm, but something in his eyes told me that wasn't a casual question. I walked closer, slowly. "All the time," I said. "Sometimes I wonder if I even exist when I leave this house." He looked straight at me, no smile, no pretense. "You exist? Even when you think no one's looking?" "I see you." My chest ached, because I believed him. And I hated that I believed him, because it meant this wasn't just infatuation. It was real, and that made it dangerous. I sat down, not close, but not far either. We talked for hours, about books, about cities, about childhood memories. He told me things I never expected, how his mother used to sing to him in Spanish when he was little, that he missed her, that even with all his success, he still felt lonely. And I told him about the nights I cried quietly so my cousin wouldn't hear me, about the guilt of dreaming too big when your family sacrificed everything. He listened, really listened, and then, softly, he said, "I wish I could protect you from everything." My throat closed. I didn't cry, but my heart did something I can't explain, because in that moment, I wasn't the maid, and he wasn't the CEO. We were just two people, sitting in the sunlight, falling into something neither of us dared name. It was beautiful and terrifying, because we both knew we were already too far in, and the world outside that sunroom wouldn't understand. Things had been quiet. Too quiet. That kind of quiet where every look says more than it should, and yet no one dares say anything out loud. I kept telling myself, don't fall deeper. Don't imagine more than what it is. But it was too late. Every time he looked at me, I felt the ground shift. And every time he left the room, I missed him. But then she walked in. Her name was Vanessa. Blonde, tall, confident. The kind of woman who wore designer heels like they were sneakers and always had perfectly polished nails. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was setting up tea in the sitting room when I heard the front door open, and his voice, warm, friendly. I peeked. Just for a second, she hugged him. He hugged her back. Something in me collapsed. It wasn't just the hug. It was the way she laughed so easily with him. The way she touched his arm like she'd done it 100 times before. My hands shook as I poured the tea. I wasn't stupid. Vanessa was the kind of woman who belonged in his world. I was the woman who fell asleep in his bed by accident. Later, I found out she was an old friend, a family friend. They had history, college, trips, familiarity. I tried to act like it didn't matter. But that day, when I saw her walk past him in heels that clicked like confidence and call him Nate like it was nothing, I felt small again. Invisible. Like everything we'd shared, the poems, the looks, the confessions. Maybe it was just a moment. Maybe I was just a moment. That night, he found me in the hallway. "You left early," he said. I nodded. I had things to do. He looked at me for a long second. "You're upset." "Why would I be?" "Vanessa, you don't have to explain anything to me." I cut in. I didn't mean to sound cold, but I was trying so hard not to break. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I haven't looked at her the way I look at you." I didn't know whether to believe him or run away from him, because part of me wanted to trust. But the other part, the one that had been disappointed too many times before, kept whispering, "Don't be foolish, Emily. Girls like you don't end up with men like him." But what if, just this once, that wasn't true? What if he meant it? What if I was more than just a beautiful distraction? The next morning, I didn't expect to see him. I thought he'd keep his distance after what happened, and maybe a part of me hoped he would, because I didn't know how to be near him without feeling like I was unraveling from the inside out. But there he was, waiting in the sunroom, alone, hands clasped, eyes already on me before I even stepped fully into the doorway. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, slowly, carefully. I walked in like the floor might break beneath me. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, but the space between us felt thick, not empty, just charged. He started. "Vanessa, she's just an old friend. My parents love her. But we were never." He stopped, took a breath. "We never fit." I didn't say anything. Not yet. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "But with you, it's different. And I know it shouldn't be. I know how this looks, how this feels, but I can't ignore it." I looked away. "It doesn't matter what you feel, Nathan." "This is dangerous to who?" he asked gently. "To me," I said, my voice almost breaking. "Because people like me don't survive falling for people like you." He was silent. Then, slowly, he moved closer. Not all the way, just enough for me to feel the warmth of his presence again. "I see you, Emily. Not your uniform, not your title. You." His hand reached out, palm up. But he didn't touch me. He let me decide, and something in me cracked open. Because no one had ever offered me tenderness without expecting something in return. So I placed my hand in his. Just for a second. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a promise. It was real. And it scared me more than anything. I pulled away. "I need time," I whispered. He nodded. "I'll wait." And I believed him. Because his voice didn't sound like a man chasing a thrill. It sounded like someone willing to stay, even when things got hard. But my heart, still guarded, still full of scars, I walked out of that room with tears in my eyes, not because I was hurt, but because, for the first time in my life, I was being loved gently. And I didn't know what to do with that. After that afternoon in the sunroom, I kept my distance. Not because I didn't want him, but because I wanted him too much. And that kind of wanting, the kind that stirs your soul and makes your hands shake, can feel like a threat when your heart has been bruised many times before. But here's what broke me quietly. He didn't chase me, but he never left. He didn't bombard me with texts or corner me with questions. He didn't try to win me with flowers or grand gestures. Instead, he waited. He'd still be in the kitchen some mornings when I arrived, still offer a quiet good morning, still remember how I liked my tea. One day, I found a single post-it note next to the tea kettle. It said, "Some people arrive quietly and stay forever." No name, no signature. But I knew it was him. And that tiny square of paper felt more powerful than a bouquet of roses ever could. The silence between us became softer again. Not heavy like before. Not full of questions. Just full of something beautiful, waiting to be named. Then, one evening, I found myself alone in the library. I wasn't working. I just needed somewhere to breathe. He walked in. He didn't ask if he could stay. He just sat across from me, took a book from the shelf, and started reading. Minutes passed. No words, just two people existing in the same quiet. Then, he looked up. "Do you want me to stop?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I think I've been waiting for this silence my whole life." He smiled. A soft one, the kind you save for rare moments. And then, he did something I didn't expect. He slid a small notebook across the table. "You said you wanted to write someday." I thought, maybe this could be the first page. It was blank, but it held more meaning than anything I'd ever owned, because it meant he was listening. Not to impress me, not to seduce me, but to see me. And for the first time, I let myself imagine it. What if this wasn't dangerous? What if this was what it looked like when love is safe? Still wild, still electric, but safe. I wasn't ready to say the words yet, but they were forming inside me. And I knew it wouldn't be long before they found their way out. I didn't plan it. That's the thing about real moments. They never happen the way you imagine them. I had stayed late again, not because I had to, but because the house felt warmer when he was in it. Nathan was in the garden, reading again. That notebook he gave me was tucked under my arm, and I don't know what gave me the courage, but I walked outside. The air was cooler than usual. The sky was fading into that soft orange you only get for a few minutes before sunset. He looked up, not surprised, just calm, like he'd known I was coming. Sit, he asked, motioning beside him on the bench. I sat close, but not too close. My fingers clutched the notebook. I wrote something, I said. He waited. I opened the first page. My voice was shaking. It's not a poem. Not really. Just a thought. I read aloud. Some people build walls because they're afraid of being broken again. But sometimes someone comes along who doesn't try to knock the walls down. They just sit outside, quietly, until you feel safe enough to open the door. When I finished, I didn't look at him right away. But then I did. And his eyes, God. His eyes, they were the softest I'd ever seen them. He reached out slowly, carefully, like every movement mattered. His fingers brushed mine, barely, but enough to make my entire body still. I've never wanted to be someone's safe place more than I want to be yours. He whispered. I closed my eyes, and in that 1 second, I let the notebook fall from my hands, and I leaned in. His lips met mine like we'd done it 1,000 times in another life. But this wasn't lust. This wasn't rush. It was stillness, warmth, truth. He kissed me like a promise, like he was telling me, you're not just a moment, you're the story. And when we pulled apart, I didn't feel scared. I felt home. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything, his hand in mine, the sound of his voice, the way he looked at me after. Not like a man who got what he wanted, but like a man who finally found what he'd been searching for. And for the first time since this whole thing began, I stopped running. Because love, real love, doesn't chase you. It waits. Asterisk, I thought the kiss would change everything. In a way, it did, but not the way I imagined. For a few days, things were beautiful, quietly beautiful. We didn't speak of it, didn't label it, but there was a new softness between us, a comfort, a rhythm. He'd pass by me and brush his fingers lightly against mine. We'd exchange glances that lasted just a second too long. We'd sit near each other without saying a word. And yet, I'd never felt more understood in my life. I started to believe it could work. I really did, until I overheard the conversation. It wasn't meant for me. I was walking past the study, carrying folded linens, when I heard Nathan's voice, low, tense, and someone else's, older, firmer. His father. You know this isn't sustainable. Nathan, people are starting to talk. Let them. You're the face of Carter Industries. You want to throw that away for a girl who cleans your house. Silence. I'm not throwing anything away, Nathan said. But his voice, it shook. You think she loves you? You think this is real? She's young. She's temporary. This is not her world. I didn't hear the rest. I couldn't. My hands were trembling. My chest felt hollow. I turned and walked away. Fast, quiet, unseen, like I was trained to do. But inside, I was shattered. Was I just a temporary chapter in his life? Would he choose me in front of the world, or only in quiet corners where no one was watching? That night, he found me in the kitchen. You're quiet, he said. I didn't look at him. I'm just tired. He stepped closer. Emily, please talk to me. I turned. Finally, would you still love me if the whole world was watching? He blinked, caught off guard. Where is this coming from? Just answer. He hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he was afraid of what it meant to say it out loud. And that was my answer. I took a step back. That's what I thought. And I walked out. Not because I wanted to, but because sometimes you need to protect your heart before someone else breaks it. I cried the entire bus ride home. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I knew he still loved me. And sometimes that makes it hurt even more. Asterisk, days passed. Then a week. Then 2, and still nothing. No calls, no messages, no notes. And maybe that was what I needed. to finally realize that even the most beautiful feelings can be swallowed by silence. But here's the truth no one tells you. When you've been seen by someone, you can't unfeel that. You can't go back to being invisible. I still showed up for work. Not at the Carter house. I told the agency I needed a break from that assignment. I started cleaning smaller homes, farther away, places without sunrooms, without libraries, without gardens full of meaning. But I couldn't escape him. Every time I made tea, I remembered how he used to place the cup exactly where I liked it. Every poem I read whispered like his voice in my ear. Every time someone said Emily, I wished it came from him. I told myself I did the right thing, that I walked away before he could choose comfort over courage. But in the quiet moments, the ones before sleep, I replayed everything. The night in the garden, the way his fingers hovered over mine, the way he kissed me like I mattered, and I wondered, did I give up too soon? Did he hesitate because he didn't care, or because he cared too much? I wrote a letter. I didn't send it. I couldn't. But I needed to get the words out. Dear Nathan, I wish I didn't miss you, but I do. I wish I didn't replay your laugh, but I do. I wish I didn't believe what we had was real, but I do. You made me feel safe. You made me feel seen. And for the first time in my life, I believed I could be loved exactly as I am. If that was just a moment for you, I'll survive. But if it meant something more, you know where to find me. Amelia folded it, placed it in a drawer, and tried to move on. But something inside me kept whispering, if it was real, it's not over. And maybe, just maybe, he was thinking the same thing. It had been 21 days since I'd last seen him. 3 weeks, 500 thoughts per day. And one single hope I kept buried so deep. I almost convinced myself it wasn't there. Until the letter came. It wasn't in my mailbox. It was slipped under my apartment door. I knew it was him before I opened it. No return address, no name, just my first name. Handwritten. Emily. My hands trembled as I unfolded the page. His handwriting, clean, careful, like he took his time. Emily, you asked me once if I would still love you if the whole world was watching. I was silent that day. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I was afraid of how loud it would echo once I said it. You deserve a love that doesn't hide, a love that stands up. And I failed you. I let the voices of others speak louder than my own. But I want to say this clearly now. I love you. In sunlight, in silence, in front of the whole world, or in a room where only you exist. You are not a chapter, you are the entire story. If you're still willing to turn the next page, I'll be waiting. Nee read it once, then again. Tears fell silently, because the letter didn't fix everything, but it opened the door I thought was forever closed. He still loved me. He still believed. And maybe, just maybe, I could believe again too. That night, I held the letter to my chest and whispered out loud, if you mean it, find me. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but something deep in my bones told me he would. The day after I got his letter, I barely slept. I held it in my hands so many times the edges started to wear. I read each line until I could hear it in his voice, but still, I was scared. Because saying I love you in a letter is safe, but love, real love, is messy. It demands presence. It demands risk. So I waited. And then, the next night, he found me. Not at work. Not at my apartment. At the little bookstore I go to when I need to breathe. The one no one knows about. I was sitting on the floor between poetry shelves, holding a book I wasn't really reading, and suddenly, I felt it. That stillness in the air. I looked up. And there he was. Nathan. Hair a little out of place. No suit. Just a dark sweater and jeans, and those same eyes. Soft, steady, sure. He didn't speak at first, just walked over and sat beside me. No pretense, no drama. You said if I meant it, to find you. I nodded. And you did. He took a breath. I'm sorry I made you doubt it. I let fear speak louder than love. But I'm not afraid anymore. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I don't need you to promise the world, Nathan. I just need to know I'm not the only one who still feels it. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the small notebook I had left behind in the garden weeks ago. Every page in here is yours, he said. But the ending, I'd like to write it with you. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I leaned into him, fast, emotional. Our foreheads touched. Our hands found each other like magnets. And then he kissed me, not like before. This kiss was different. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't quiet. It was full of everything we hadn't said. Apology, longing, relief, and love, all consuming, wild, gentle love. When we finally pulled away, I was crying. He wiped my tears with the back of his hand. Don't cry, he whispered. We're okay now. And somehow, I believed him. Because we weren't broken anymore. We were beginning. And for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. It felt like the only thing that ever made sense. It's been 6 months since that night in the bookstore. 6 months since I let my heart say yes. Since I stopped running. Since he stopped hiding. We didn't move fast. We moved honestly. He invited me to come with him on a trip. Nothing fancy. Just a weekend by the coast. We talked for hours in the car. No masks. No fear. Just us. We walked barefoot on the sand. He read me lines from my own notebook. The one I had filled with every emotion I once tried to bury. And then, under a sky full of stars, he turned to me and said, I used to think I had everything. But everything meant nothing without someone to share it with. He reached into his pocket. No ring, no box. Just a single key. I want you in my life every day. Not as the girl I once met in a quiet room, but as the woman I choose, over and over, with no hiding, no shame, just love. I took the key in my hand. It wasn't about the house. It was about the door I once thought I'd never be allowed to open. And now, it was mine to. We lived together. Now, not in a castle, not in a dream. In something better. A life we built. A love we choose. A story we wrote. One quiet, brave page at a time. Sometimes I still wake up thinking it was all a dream. Then I turn over, and he's there. Reading, or smiling, or simply holding my hand like it's the most natural thing in the world. Because now it is, and after everything, the fear, the silence, the doubt, I finally know the truth. Real love doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It stays. It waits. And when the moment is right, it walks through the door and never looks back. So I ask you, do you believe that when it's true love, it always finds a way? Or do you think destiny only helps those who risk it all for love? Because I know one thing for sure, they were happy with the choice they made. Because when love is real, it never ends.